good to be with you all. We're just starting us up today, getting our little ducks in a row as we start the weekly briefing. It's good to have you here. We'll just give it a minute to see all the familiar faces and some new ones. The Rev community is growing. We have about 540,000, 540 people joining us on the community now, on the platform right now, and growing. So we just love the momentum that the community is picking up. I do meetings twice a week right now, onboarding new members. And it's really fun to listen to where people come from, how they find the platform. And overwhelmingly, people say, wow, I didn't know you guys were here. It's so great to have you. So for all of you spreading the good word about the community, we appreciate that. It's picking up momentum and doing its job. So really great. Yeah, I just see a couple more names popping in here. And then we'll start right about now. I'll start this thing. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly briefing. It is Wednesday, April 12th. So great to have you part of all that we're doing here.
Are you recording?
We sure are recording.
You are. Okay, sorry.
Thanks, Jason.
I thought I was doing my Joel duty there. Like
it's good to have someone on my back. It's funny because I told Jason earlier, like, wow, I'm doing this by myself today. Do you think I can handle it? So we have to have somebody sitting on the sidelines, making sure I get all the work done.
You got it.
This is the weekly briefing. It's the one time a week we get together and share what's the thoughts and ideas that are happening in our community, things that we've been listening to, things we might have heard from many of you studio owners, either personally or on the platform, and just some ideas. Every once in a while, us Rev thinkers come up with an idea too. And today's topic actually came from an internal conversation we were having. Tomorrow on Confab, Joel is interviewing Paulo, the owner of Two Things, who is a strategy agency, a person I've been working with closely for the last couple of years. And it's very interesting how different he goes after projects than many studio owners that we work with. And those internal conversations started leading to ideas of what is this thing that we're talking about? How do we sell something more than just, commodity-based services, hour and time-related elements? Or some of us are very focused on deliverable-based items as well, engagements as well. But could we up the game and play something different? Could we offer different services? Our questions we're constantly asking ourselves at RevThink, and we want people to process along with us and ask themselves the question, is it right for you to be doing this as well? So that's where today's conversation came up with. If you're wondering what the S word is, it is the word strategy. So I know, Ian, you probably thought I was going to be swearing today. I'm not swearing, not yet at least. But strategy is such a funny conversation that we have, because often people want to engage folks in this idea of strategy, but one of the first places they pivot to is hiring a strategist, as if it's another service you can just offer. And really, the engagement might look like, hey, you currently are picking me to make your video. Why don't you also pick me to provide you a strategy? But strategy is a different game. It's a different angle, and it's not a pick me economy. Strategy often requires you to engage your client in theory, prospecting, idea, and long-term value. And often strategy is built into a lot of the services you would already currently provide, but just upsell them, give them a different idea of results and idea and capabilities. But before we go too far, I want to just launch this quickly little poll, wondering who we have here, where we are, and questions you might be asking yourself. So just take a moment, answer to the best of your ability. Because I'm a loner today, we will have a more open conversation today too. So just curious of where you have, what kind of work you're doing, and who our community really is. you can, I'll just say for the purpose of this poll, you can define strategy any way you want to. I'm just curious how you're currently thinking and positioning about yourself in this marketplace. There's about 21 people answered. That might be right, because at least 3 of us probably aren't going to answer that. Okay, cool. That's all, y'all. Let's see what happens here. Just for the purpose of this conversation, I'm kind of curious where everyone falls. So the first question is, do you currently offer strategy of any kind to your client? And 58% of you say yes, there is a strategy part of the engagement that you're currently doing. 17% are saying, nope, definitely not part of the services yet. And this last one says, I don't know, maybe, which I got to admit, I think if I were to answer that question a little bit for many of you, that's probably the way I would answer it, is the I don't know, maybe, because I do feel like many of you throw strategy ideas in the ring and have conversations with your clients regarding strategic ideas, but don't really recognize it yet. So this next question was to kind of justify that a little bit more. Do you currently charge for strategy? 42% of you are saying, yes, of course we are. And the other part is saying, no, but should I? And the last is saying, I don't even know if I am or not. I don't know how to include that into things. So very interesting outcome. It's really skewed 50-50 with on many of these answers. So it's great to have this conversation happening, because I think many of you who are doing strategy have an angle that you could share with others, but many of us don't quite even understand what strategy is at all, and how to define it, and especially how to sell it. I'm going to share with you this thought that we often share with many of you in our one-on-one engagements. It's this thing called the value pyramid. It's often how we try to guide people to what the opportunities are, especially if you're in the idea of creating new opportunities where you have to work less but make the same money. And the bottom layer here really is this time-based economy. It's the service-based work that we're doing relies heavily on these commodities. So imagine a commodity basically is time, or many of us leverage talent. So a director, an editor, animators, whatever that those talent might be, certain tools, styles, or even pet projects, you can put yourself into the commodity base. And this commodity based layer, you might imagine you're a freelancer, is what you're saying. I am an animator, pay me by the hour and I'll do that work. That's the commodity layer. A service based business takes those commodities and leverages them up into a package. So you can imagine many of your clients saying to you, I will award this project to you. Can you please gather together the director, the DP, the camera crew, or gather together the animators, the render farm, or whatever? Can you deliver the jobs? Give me the deliverables that I need, and you do the work of gathering the commodities and getting it across the finish line. That's most of the people that we are working with and inside of our community. We would say you're a production studio, maybe an animation studio, but that studio-based work is really this thought process of curating the right talent to create the proper deliverables that clients will pay you, they engage you for that output, those deliverables, and then you're hiring constantly that talent marketplace, the commodity marketplace. But if you were to take multiple services and wrap them up, now you're going to sell a strategy. So many agencies or consultants are the ones that are selling a strategy. And it kind of works like this. Imagine a client going to you, I don't know where I want to go yet with this project. I know I need to upsell my current client base, and we have a new possible layer of service that we want to provide them, or engagement we want to put out there, new subscription we want them to engage with. And we would like to hire you, our strategy company, to help figure out how do we upsell our current client base. In that case, your pitch deck is about their current customers, what are those customers currently make decisions, and what decisions that your client would need to make in order to get the results that they're looking for. once you have that result-based action plan, then you can recognize, oh, now I know which services to hire. We're going to need a production entity to do this. We're going to need a media service company to provide that. We might need to do a live action event to make this thing happen. And we'll hire that service-based business to that. And of course, those service-based businesses would then hire the commodities, and the value pyramid plays itself out. And it's in that engagement right there where we would ask our clients a different question, that we would understand how those services play themselves out. But if we're often anchored in one type of service, we often want to sell that service as the only answer, and we don't recognize where we fit into a larger economy to help our clients accomplish a larger goal. And then, of course, the top of the pyramid here is vision. And with the right kind of vision, where I want to take my company, or the fact that they even know that they want to do an upsell, the vision is put in place at your client's company, where the strategy then comes alongside to recognize how to accomplish that vision of an upsell with the strategy we talked about, and so on. That's how the value pyramid works. And we often want people to recognize that this value pyramid is always at work. It's constantly happening. You're probably not part of those conversations with many of your clients. Your client, even if your client is the CMO of the business, there's often some sort of work they've done first before they've called you to hire you to execute the strategy they've come up with. And it's in that moment of your personal upsell. How do I get in the room with the CMO before they make that conversation? What new questions do I need to ask, or what possibilities can I put before my client so that they'll think of me in that way? That's often our greatest challenge. For one of you out there that say that you are currently offering a strategy to your client, would one of you just unmute yourself and just throw it out here and say, what kind of strategy do you provide? And what does that conversation look like? I don't have names, so you're gonna have to volunteer yourself here. No? You can just raise your hand. There you go. Was that?
You want me to go, Tim?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's Lewis from Pilot.
Oh, hey,
We're doing, for one of our clients, we're brought in for this one project that goes for kind of a year, and we have a consulting fee that goes for a monthly. And as each of the campaigns come up, we're used to do strategy on kind of hand in hand with the client on building out what type of spots we should do for each campaign, what kind of graphics we should do for each campaign, what the messaging should be for each campaign, and then interacting a lot with the research department. But it's like one of our few and far between clients that want this kind of strategy from us. Interestingly, you know what I mean? A lot of times we're getting, our regular assignments are in that, lower tier of the value pyramid, where it's like, here's the brief, execute, please. So it sort of stands out, where we're in the conversation with research, discussing our opinions about what the research is and what they should do. So we always feel like it's a little headier and more interesting for us.
That's actually that sounds like an ideal opportunity too, right? Because you're really directing yourself to the projects that you would eventually create. You're in the collaborative process saying, these are the type of projects that we can do. And even putting your best foot forward, because if you left up to the client to decide which projects to allocate to you, they might not always leverage your greatest talent or the things that you could, the things that they don't recognize that you currently produce for others. But when you're in the room and deciding what kind of projects, you can upsell yourself or being seen for the expert that you are many times over. That's a perfect example.
It's nice. It's one of the things. What's interesting about it is that I've found it's hard to scale that to other clients without sounding like I haven't figured out a good way to talk about it without sounding a little boastful, because it's a lot of me. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
As the owner. So
It is, yeah, that's a great question too. How do we recognize this opportunity and leverage it forward? Do you charge separately for that when you work with
yeah,
them?
effectively, we come up with we have like a building the camp. Well, I'll start backwards. We have a production fee. I don't mean a normal production fee, like production fee, percentage fee. I don't mean that. I mean a production fee for producing spots that we call production.
Sure.
Then we have a fee for creating the campaign. Then we have a fee for essentially readiness, like being ready to deploy the campaign. And then we have a consulting fee that's monthly. That's basically me being available for meetings every week and meetings that pop up, and being there to answer questions and then give my opinion, or new things that come up, and deciding, okay, is this an overage or can we absorb this into the fee? Which they're very, very, very cool about. They're not looking for freebies all the time. They'll say straight out, like, hey, we have something new here. Is this an extra item, or is this something we can do? And often they're looking for my expertise. Like, they really don't know that this took 10 minutes to make. And I'll say, listen, I'm happy to absorb this in the fee. It's no problem, like that kind of thing. Or they just don't know, and I don't want to pull the wool over their eyes because they're being so kind about everything else. So it's really a nice opportunity to be partners with them.
That's great. Louis, those are really great examples. Thanks for sharing. Hey,
Sure thing.
Jamie Joyce, I saw that you post something here at Project Discovery. Would you be willing to jump on and just explain what that's like for you?
Yeah, sorry, I'm in the middle of something, but
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
it's a lot of times clients will come to us to I do documentary film, and a lot of people elect to do documentaries because they don't want to plan things and they just want to get into filming and shooting interviews and just making a mess. So we'll kind of like sort of, stop them a little bit and kind of challenge some of those assumptions and try to get into the deeper why of like what the film is about and et cetera. And for that, we'll encourage them to do I'm calling it a project discovery package on our end, but I will say kind of like a strategy and creative direction, I think is what I've been calling it over the past year or so.
And you charge separately for that? It sounds like
yeah. So, and we kind of created a bit of a process. So we'll go through a series of, ideally we'd like to get them in a room for like a whole day, but a lot of times they're really eager to just get started, let's just film stuff. Let's just, they're high motivation to get moving on the project. So, and, or they're too busy. So we've been trying to, promote strategy and breaking apart what would be an all-day strategy session into a series of 90-minute meetings, or we can get them for 2 hours, stuff like that. So
that is really, really awesome. I want people to hear a couple of things that you said there, and you can jump off. I know you were doing something, but thank you for joining. There's a couple of things that Jamie just said there I want you to hear. That one is she has recognized this need for clients when she's starting an engagement, and she created a package. There's already an offering that's in place. It feels very normal, very easy to engage, because she would say to the client, hey, I have this package to get you started. Let's work this way. And the second, you can understand that the deliverable is a workshop. It's not a product. She's not necessarily guaranteeing. I'm speaking on your behalf, Jamie, so correct me if I go too far, but many people, they're not guaranteeing the output of something. They're simply saying, let's workshop something together. And the workshop is the deliverable. But as Louis just explained and Jamie just explained, you can imagine in that workshop, you actually are guiding your clients towards their greatest outcome and your greatest expertise. You're really leveraging this moment where you can put the output of the project way beyond the deliverables into more of what is it you're expecting? Why would you want that? How would you understand what your win is like? And then the idea of the strategy is help you to get to your win. Matt Taylor from RevThink, he likes to explain a strategy as helping the client win, or I think he says a pathway to winning. And it's a really clear objective when you understand it that way, is like, oh, you actually have an understanding of what a win looks like in your mind. But what you might need is decision points down that pathway that it would be good to process with an expert that knows when and how to pivot certain resources, ideas, other services to accomplish that goal. And that learning moment, that workshop is the learning moment where you create engagement to discover those decision points with your client. And then you're leveraging those decision points to help them, give them exposure to yours and other people's expertise, and then helping them come up with that decision. It's in those decisions that you can then sell down your own sales funnel too. When you have services you can provide, you can put that into the hat, but you still want to retain them in that experience of you being the strategist and helping them discover the why part of their project. You know, Lewis, you also said something really interesting. It's part of this value-based proposition we put out there for our clients. And I think that you were saying, like, it's you have one client, but it's hard to understand how to leverage this to get other clients. And I think it's often because the word strategy is something that we don't always understand what it looks like or how it's marketed. Matt was pointing out in our conversation that the marketplace for strategists or strategy often looks like a dark art. It's really like it's hard for clients to compare what you're offering with what other people would in the marketplace. And the proposals and the scope of work aren't always very clear externally from what the strategists or strategy companies are trying to do. I think a lot of that's related to each client actually needs a different output. So you can't necessarily compare what client A and client B are looking for. They're looking for two totally different outcomes. So how would I understand and price that? And I think it's going into those engagement where we don't have the confidence that we can work through that workshop and find a value proposition for them, that we hold ourselves back or don't always know how to put that forward in our own marketing, in our own positioning, so it's clear. I like Jamie's idea, but like she kind of gets, oh, I provide a service, documentary filmmaking, but I recognize many of my future clients don't really understand what it takes to make a film. So I'm going to create an engagement where they can discover what that process is like. I educate them. I learn from them what they're trying to accomplish. We build a plan. Pay me to do that. And then of course that plan leverages down the pipeline. And many of us, like, we actually are putting strategy in most of the work we're doing and not ever really leveraging it anyway. So to recognize that there is a moment to break up that work that you feel like you're just throwing in for your current deliverables and thinking you're going to pay, someone's going to pay you for that. That's a hard one for us entrepreneurs to get over. We have that imposter syndrome moment of, yeah, sure, this client likes me. Of course they'll let me do it, but I'm not really sure everyone will let me do it. And that imposter syndrome is a hard one when you're the entrepreneur, as you said. I think Lewis is like, you're just selling yourself. And it's an awkward moment. I'm in there selling myself for what I do, and then trying to get a price for me when they already have me on the phone. You're like, you're that self-talk to you can really kind of downplay the workload. I'm going to go back to a comment that Megan Wells made on the chat here. She said, there's something about doing strategy first because it informs the correct creative execution. And it makes the assessment of success more objective because the execution ladders up the agreed upon strategy. Otherwise, it's subjective assessment. When really what she's saying here is a strategy actually in your production pipeline is almost an insurance policy. Many times, I'll tell you, in the NFT space I was in, many times that it was so subjective and moving so fast, you never really understand what the deliverable is at the end. You just know I got started and here we go. And you can get behind very easily on some projects if you don't have that clearly defined. So one thing Megan is pointing out that you might recognize as an opportunity, which might be currently a red flag, is if a client's coming to you and if things are not clearly defined, instead of pushing it back on them and saying, can you go define this more and then call me? Or say, I don't really know what you're talking about, but it sounds like we should charge you X amount of dollars and then we'll work it out later on. Really, you could say in that moment, oh, we recognize what you're trying to accomplish. I can hear what your objectives are, but maybe we should workshop together first and do a creative phase or production strategy phase of this project and get the executables clearly defined before we start production. And you just say to the client, it's actually very easy. It's a one-day workshop. It's 10 grand. Let's do it and have fun. Just something as easy as that. And then what Megan is pointing out well is like in that moment, you're also creating this final deliverables, which is the insurance policy that I can actually get what you're trying to accomplish. I can get that out of my production studio and into your hands. So you'll be thankful that we're done. I love that perspective because it's often something that we honestly feel like we're the victim of many times in our clients, is that they've come to us to ask us to do something, but we know they're putting the risk on our shoulders. Why not take a moment and reduce the risk and upsell you as an expert and recognizing there's a possibility for you to jump in, guide the client and get the executables you want. Anybody have another thought of strategy they'd like to throw out here last couple of minutes? Something else you found that has worked for you, or question you might have of where it's not quite working and you'd want to understand it? How about Jed? I see that you threw a question out here a little bit.
I'm in a Starbucks, so I probably don't have very good.
You're good. Why don't you
very
just
good
ask the
audio
question?
here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What was the question?
Throw what you put in the chat. Throw it out here as a question.
Oh yeah. So I was just saying, we're actually working with one of our big corporate clients for the first time, doing, I guess you could call it a workshop. We're getting paid just to work through the creative options and budget the creative options, which I guess to my fault is usually something we do for free, which I probably shouldn't be offering for free. And it was kind of a surprise. The agency owner called me and said, hey, here's what we're doing. I can pay you for this. And I was like, oh, that's weird. But maybe I need to start thinking about that as a normal, not an exception to the rule.
Yeah, you know what? Right. You lucked out one time, but I think you actually did discover the pot of gold at end of the rainbow there, where you actually realize that they're not the only client in that situation. And the people who are coming to you, imagine that, right? Clients handing you over a large sum of money and really a part of their career. You know, hey, I on the upside, I want you to help me win a Cannes Lions. On the downside, I don't want to get fired by giving this project to you. Imagine in that exchange being able to say to them, hey, let's create some security between us. Why don't we at the very beginning create part of our production protocol, this 1-day process or a 2-hour meeting. And in that meeting, you're going to guide your client in the direction you want them to go to help make decisions for the project. Even if at first you didn't charge for it, you would begin a strategy relationship with at least one client or that client. And you could learn for yourself what it's like to workshop through. You'll discover after 3, 4, 5 projects, how much easier those projects are. So now at some point you can learn the opportunity to say, hey, before we get started, let me, let's work out, do a workshop and for a flat fee. And what it'll do is guarantee that this project doesn't go over budget, or we'll create this project on time as you expect. And that little bit of insurance policy that you're also listening to them in a proactive way often creates a brand new value proposition for you. So yeah, we don't want to just have our clients always pick us or let them guide us. We want to figure out how we can turn the tables and guide them and move them forward. I meant to make this point earlier, but I'll make it before we wrap. I think one reason we get hung up on the word strategy is because we often throw the word agency out there very freely. And so we say, oh, I'm not a production company, I'm an agency. But then if you're not really doing strategy, we'd ask the question, well, what kind of agent are you? The reason around agency or agentry is the idea that you're working on behalf of your client. So a very basic agency relationship is a client is giving you their budget and you're kind of their marketing arm, their marketing department, and you're the one executing out from your agency multiple different strategies. Hey, here's your media strategy, your communication strategy, your media buy strategy, your production strategy, and you're putting all that strategy together under one umbrella. That's what an agency or agent tree does. I'm working on behalf of someone else with their funds and their money. If we step into that word agency too soon, and we don't really have the opportunity or know how to leverage strategy, we actually then don't have a moment to upsell later on when we figure out what strategy is. So I would encourage you to not use the word agency too soon, or use the word agency to create the moment to say, hey, we're actually an agency. Here's our method to get a project done. And we do the strategy session first. Then we will actually help you execute these strategies into different services. And these services we could bill back for internally. We'll bill you back for those moments, but we'll help you find other partners to work alongside us and get this whole project done. That's the bigger picture conversation. I know really strategy isn't for everyone. It's not our gifting. It's not what we want to do. And that's totally fine too. We just recognize at RevThink that many of us are giving this away, are not leaning into the moment when necessary. And we want you to embrace it when possible. And anytime we can get past that hurdle and help you learn the S word and possibly sell for the S word, we want you to be able to do it. So let's do this. Let's keep the conversation going in community. I wrote a quick article about some of our thoughts that Matt and I were talking about just yesterday in our RevThinking 101 call. I'll put that out there too, so you can kind of wrap your head around some opportunities you're looking forward to. And as always, it's time to wrap up, but thank you again for being part of the weekly briefing. We love this moment once a week where we get to touch base with you. Thank you to those of you shared, Jed, Jamie, Lewis, Meg. Thank you for throwing your thoughts out there and be part of this conversation. We appreciate you all, and we do exist for you so you can thrive in your business, life, career. Put us to the test. Let's help us do that with you together. Thank you all again, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one.